Hi there, I'm Jo Roberts and welcome to this podcast. As you can see from the title of it is Why I Am Putting This Podcast on Hold. I'm making this podcast partly for cathartic reasons, so it's more of a personal endeavour and something which I'm doing to help myself feel better rather than anything else. Also, I've spent quite a bit of time and energy on these podcasts, so I thought it appropriate to make this one to explain why I won't be making any more of them for the foreseeable future. The sort of truth of the matter as regards to why I won't be making any more of these podcasts is that the ongoing crisis and challenge and difficulties that I have with my mental health have become so unmanageable that I can no longer justify to myself spending any more time on this, or indeed a whole bunch of other things. As I've said many times in this podcast before, a large amount of the problems that I've had in adulthood relating to my depression and anxiety and various other mental health issues have originated in childhood. And as I've also said before, probably the key issue is the surgeries that were forced upon me and the circumstances surrounding that. And also, to be very specific, the feelings of alienation and separation which have arose from me being intersex and never having successfully managed to come to terms with it and deal with it in such a way as to allow me to thrive in life. So I haven't, essentially. I haven't thrived, and I'm not thriving right now. In fact, what I'm going through in my life at the time of making this podcast is so far removed from thriving that it could easily be considered a polar opposite. Obviously, I recognise that despite the fact that I was set on this path because of events that were out with my control, I have to assume full responsibility for actually helping myself in the here and now, and I'm fully responsible for doing whatever needs to be done to get myself back on track or to try and sort of improve my life. The only problem is that I have absolutely no clue how to do it and feel so overwhelmed by everything that I pretty much have no clue what to do anymore. The likely outcome of this, if I don't manage to find solutions, will be that various aspects of my health will deteriorate, and the reason that I know this is because it's already happening. I'm having regular migraines and a host of skin conditions which are stress related, as well as stomach aches, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, tearfulness, etc., etc. So where does this podcast fit into all of that? Well, when I'm spending time on things other than trying to be present with the overwhelming feelings that appear to have originated in childhood, extreme rage, grief, sadness, hurt, shame, it is making matters worse. And there are a few ways in which this happens. Migraines are one such thing, to the point that I'm actually not even managing particularly well to take care of basic needs anymore, such as attending to various things in my home. And what I'm finding is I'm having to do quite an extreme juggling act as regards to the maintenance and upkeep and cleaning of my home. Thankfully, I don't work for a living. I live off disability benefits for a couple of health conditions that I have a diagnosis of, and also because of all of the aforementioned issues which I just spoke about. But there are still responsibilities which go hand in hand with being a fully grown adult living in the world and doing certain things in your home is a part of that. And what I'm finding is that when I'm apportioning time to anything other than having to attend to the overwhelming and extreme feelings that I live with every single day of my life, it's making matters worse, and I'm ending up with severe headaches, cluster headaches, tension headaches, migraines, and a assorted variety of other ailments. I'm not able to start any new hobbies. I'm not really able to do a lot of the things which most people do and take for granted. I don't sleep properly at night a lot of the time. I can be up several times a night to go to the toilet, to urinate. When I say several times, I mean no less than 3 times, and sometimes as many as 7 or 8 times. It depends on the amount of emotional distress I'm in. Nightmares have also increased. That would seem to be synonymous with post-traumatic stress. And I don't just have nightmares, I can have extremely upsetting, violent nightmares. And whilst I'm making this podcast, and whilst I'm sort of, for want of a better term, pouring my heart out and being honest, I may as well lay it on the table as well that in addition to the surgeries that I had forced upon me and the very extreme traumatic circumstances surrounding that, I was also sexually abused as a child as well, by a paedophile. And the sort of trauma background didn't even end there either, but I won't go into the rest of it. In summary, my life has become extremely unmanageable, and I'm suffering to a degree which makes it pretty much impossible for me to continue devoting time to stuff like this. And it's very sad for me where this podcast is concerned, because I had so many ideas for future podcasts that I wanted to make. I had a list of topics that I wanted to talk about, not just relating to subjects that are relating to being intersex, but it actually went beyond even that, and I wanted to expand into other subjects matter, and I had huge plans for this channel and what I wanted to do, but it's simply not going to be possible because, as I said, things are just becoming unmanageable. And this podcast is not the only thing which I'm going to have to sacrifice either. There are other things that I do which I've already had to cut back. I have an allotment as well, and it's a huge allotment, and because of how huge it is, it's probably not going to be manageable to me, and I think eventually, somewhere down the line, I may even have to give that up too. But things have become really quite extreme. I find myself crying in public places, and that's when you know that things are in a bad way. And help is not really what it could be or should be, so that's not ideal either. So it may seem somewhat strange for me to be making this podcast given that I have such a small number of subscribers, but it's also not just for them, it's also for future people who come onto this channel and may listen to the podcasts, just to give them an insight as regards to why I suddenly stopped. The fact that I didn't manage to have many subscribers listening to this and didn't manage to make myself heard was obviously a source of extreme disappointment and sadness as well, because I did think that I had at least a few things worth saying. But I can't force people to care about the issues that face intersex people or care about intersex people, full stop. it seems very much to me as if that entire thing is still viewed as a sort of taboo subject. And my feelings on the issues surrounding this haven't changed one bit. I listened to a podcast recently of a group of intersex people talking about this subject, and they were all very much of the medical view of intersex, and what they were doing was they were very much shining a spotlight on the medical issues associated with various intersex conditions, one of which was Klinefelter's, and they were very much shining a spotlight on that part of it and completely neglected to mention people like myself who were operated on non-consensually for almost no good, solid, sound medical reasons. There were a couple of surgeries which, if they even needed to be done at all, were done at an age which was far too early. There was one entirely cosmetic procedure, and there was one which, in all likelihood, was probably completely unnecessary. And these other intersex people were given an entirely one-sided view of the subject and making it all about entirely medical issues which demand treatment, and being very unfair to people like myself who have had surgeries forced upon us for little to no good reasons. So my feelings on the matters relating to all of that haven't changed one iota. I still think that this is a human rights issue. I still think that it's worth standing up for. I'm just not really in a position to do it anymore. And to be honest, I do find that profoundly heartbreaking. But as I say, it's not the only thing that I've had to scale back or give up on entirely. I also have hobbies such as photography, which I've had to scale back, and I'm just not managing to do a fraction of what I used to do. I'm not managing to do the things that I used to enjoy doing anymore, because I'm struggling so much to deal with the feelings that I'm living with. That, I mean, that's pretty much what it centres around mostly. My difficulty in dealing with my emotions. And it's not just stuff like depression and anxiety, it's also anger as well. Extreme anger. And collectively, I'm just struggling to cope with them all to a degree that the stuff that I used to do is having to be sacrificed, essentially. There is a hope that at some point in the future I would return to this channel and would resume making podcasts to talk about the subjects I was talking about, you know, human rights, justice, fairness. But I don't know if/when that's going to be possible.